Morning. Good Friday morning, everyone. Whew, it's been an amazing week. I can't believe it's Friday. Can you? Hmm. And welcome to this morning's installment of LT&A's Contractors Chatter. I am your host, Luciana Turner. And like I said, I can't believe it's the end of the week. Wow, it just kind of flew past. Well, you know how we do. As you're entering the room, say hello. Um, Drop a comment in the chat. If you're catching this by the replay, hashtag replay, I respond to all comments, messages. If you find value in this content, share it amongst your community. If you have a friend, a colleague, a business associate, a frenemy, or someone you know who is operating in business, getting ready to start business, that you believe this content could be of value to them, share it with them. We don't want to grow alone. That is one of the things I believe most business owners do in error when they get started. They try to grow alone. And that is just something entrepreneurship should never be a Lone Ranger event. It's something we should do in tandem. It's something we should do in community. And something I'm going to just throw out there. I discussed it in my podcast episode when I was talking with Coach Beverly Wolfhauer. You develop business friends. Those are those people that you can talk to about your business ups and downs. Because as much as your family loves you, as much as your friends love you, there are just some things in business they don't understand. There are some things that you want to do in your business. When you discuss it with them, they're looking at you like, what? That's what your business friends are for. So if you have build that business community, build that business network. So share it amongst your friends in your business network. So, this morning's topic of discussion, and I just wanted to throw this out there before we get into the topic of today. Tonight, yesterday, I put my foot in it and said I was doing a masterclass tonight at 7 p.m., but I'm only doing it within my private Facebook group. There is the link. It's LT&A's Contractor Hub. So 7 p.m. tonight, I'm doing a masterclass within the LT&A's Contractor Hub. You have to join the community if you wish to participate in the masterclass. Now, for those of you who are not on Facebook, but you still want to be in the masterclass, I will stream the masterclass to YouTube. My YouTube channel is LT&A Consulting Group. And because I just decided that on the fly, the link is not in the the link is not in the on the ticker, but it is in my comments and description. So there you have it. So those are the only two places that I am streaming this masterclass. And the masterclass will come down after tomorrow. So I'm doing the masterclass live tonight. You can ask me just about anything during the masterclass. If you want to submit questions, you have to do so via email or direct message by, I believe I said 12 o'clock today, but I'll go until 1 because I know my stuff. And anything I have to do extensive research in doesn't belong in a masterclass anyway. That's a training that's an extensive training or something else. And yeah, so I'll leave the sticker up for a little longer for those who want to know. LT&A Contractors Hub, or my Facebook channel. I'm streaming the masterclass 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight. I'm doing the masterclass. Now, here is the government contractor's tip. You will hear me say until the day I leave this earth. Be on time. When I say 7, I start at 7. One of the things that get proposals automatically disqualified by the government is being late. I was only able to get the government to accept my late submission is because they were late. I'm going to share this story before I get into what I was going to talk about. Once again, I was driving in a submission because I only lived an hour and a half away, and I knew exactly where the place was because I grew up down the street from the place. And thank God my sister was willing to be a pest. I was being a pest for her, to her, and she was willing to drive me. And we drove there. I was a half hour early. The receptionist wasn't there, but I signed in. That's what saved my life. I signed in, date, name, company name, the time in, and I sat down. So when the receptionist got back from lunch or wherever she was, I had already gone upstairs to turn in my submission, knocked on the door. There was somebody in the office. They didn't open the door. Went back downstairs, sat in the lobby. Receptionist came in. I told her what I was there for. She couldn't accept the submission. She rang upstairs. Nobody answered the phone. She went upstairs. Nobody answered the door. She came back downstairs and she was like, she knows they're in there because she saw them in there. They didn't answer the door. Now, the funny thing was the submission time was during lunchtime, which was bad planning on their part because the submission was due at 1:00, which meant people who were walking it in, FedEx deliveries, whatever, would be arriving during their lunch period. But I digress. So I sat there the whole time. I did not move. I did not leave, come back, nothing. I sat there. So it was 15 minutes after the submission time. The man came downstairs and I was still sitting there. So she told him who I was and he didn't want to accept my submission. And I told him I had been there 45 minutes by this point. He still tried to argue it was late. And the receptionist was like, no, because I told him I went upstairs and knocked on the door. And I said, and you were sitting at your desk and you didn't open the door. Because there was a frosted glass, but there was a side panel to the glass. And I clearly saw him. The receptionist said she went up there and knocked, and she called his office and whomever else's office, and nobody answered the door, answered the phone, and she went upstairs and knocked. For those factors, and I signed in at the registry. Because of those factors, they had to accept my submission. But I did my due diligence. Other than that, my submission wouldn't have been accepted. But the key factor to him accepting it was I had signed in the logbook, and there were 3 people who signed in after me, which solidified the fact I was there at the time that I said I was there, and that I sat and waited all that time. Why am I telling this story? I'm glad you asked. I don't recommend anyone walking in a submission. However, if you're going to do it, you need to do it being on time and persevering and staying. If there's no one at the desk to hand it to, you need to be willing to prove you were there. Sign in the sign-in book, in the login book, and sit there until there's someone to hand it to. You don't just drop and run because there's nobody to prove that you were actually on time. Secondly, you have to have the fortitude to do what I did, and that was prove that I was there and they were at fault for not for making me late. My submission was late because of them, not because of me. But secondly, third and final point, the government doesn't take late submissions. And you saw how he was pushing Mac. He was just honestly like, it's late. I'm not taking it. And that is for legal reasons. Legally, everybody has to have the same level playing field, which is why they came up with the time. Some proposals are actually open publicly. And there was, I used to know the case, and there was a big lawsuit back in the 70s over this, which is why they do this. There was allegations of misconduct, which is why the timestamps came into play. There was allegations of, somebody just slipped it to somebody because they were friends. So they got rid of the whole, you could turn it in whatever, whenever, and it had to be a certain time, day and time. And it had to be time stamped. Every process in the government is a result of some type of legal action, some type of complaint. The Wall Street Journal test in the federal government is real. If it the whole, if you don't want it on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, don't do it. That's a real test in Washington, D.C. And a lot of people are like, well, why are they still admitting? Because nobody wants a scandal. Even if it isn't true, the headache of trying to prove a negative is a piece of work. So why even do it? The hoops and the layers come from, and some of these allegations, quite frankly, is just sour grapes. Some of them were real. And one of my old managers, I wish I can get in touch with him because he could tell you some stories from his days at DCAA and in corporate of corruption, fraud, and everything else. They was just outlandish. However, they resulted in a lot of the audit steps that we have today and a lot of the oversights and a lot of checks and balances, which seemed excessive, but they're to ensure a level playing field. It's there to ensure the proper expenditure of our tax dollars. And they're to ensure that every contractor has as equitable of an outcome of the contracting process as it can. Which leads us to the topic of this morning, which is knowing your place in the process. As somebody is saying, what do you mean by know your place? Government contracting is a cycle. I don't know why people just think you just answer an RFP, submit a proposal, and that's it. It's a cycle. The contracting process is a cycle. Everybody has places, everybody has roles. You have to know the role you play and at which part of the cycle you're in and what role you play within that part of the cycle. And not understanding it, not understanding your proper placing, not understanding how to maintain your role can be detrimental to your contract and the results that come from it. Let me explain. If you don't understand that as the project lead, you're responsible for all of the oversight for that project. That means the monitoring, the financial, the budget expenditures, the reporting. And if you're running out of funds, it's not the government's job to say, hey, we're running out of funds on this project. It is your job to let the government know within a reasonable amount of time that there may be a shortfall on this project and y'all need to revisit the goals of the project, knowing your role. As the project manager, if there's a staffing issue, it is your responsibility to go to the government and say, we may need to replace key personnel. Are they key personnel? And you have to let the government know. What does your contract say? Some people you can switch out and the government doesn't need to know. Some people you need to switch out and the government need to approve the switch out. What does your contract say? You need to understand your role. And not understanding your role can lead to chaos. What does your contract say? What did you bid? What was in the RFP? The RFP spelled out who were key personnel and who wasn't. Remember what I told you yesterday. The RFP gets incorporated into the contract by reference. So the RFP is a legal document. So the RFP does not have to be written into the final contract. It's in there by reference. And what you will see in the final contract, it will say reference RFP section, blah, blah, blah. So if there's a key personnel you're trying to replace, key personnel means the government has to approve their replacement. Understand the role you play and what process you're playing in that role. When the contract is winding down, are you responsible for renegotiating the reaward or the extension, or is that somebody else's role within your company? Is the contract getting rebid, or are there add-ons to the contract? Understanding your role, what part you play in it, and the terms in your contract. Sometimes you switch hats. You have to understand that. Sometimes you're a business developer, and peep what I'm saying, pick up what I'm putting down. You are always who you are, but there are times you pick up elements of other roles, and there's some overlap. You must always understand the scope of your contract and the role that you're playing there. And because your client, which the government or any client, sometimes they will push beyond the scope. You have to be aware of scope creep. Because some people will go, well, just Why don't you do this? And why don't you do that? Next thing you know, you're in cost overrun because you're in scope creep. Understand your role. Your role is also to monitor what services you are providing under that contract. And if the services you're being asked to provide are not within the terms of the contract, it is your job to say, not within this contract. We need to go back to the table and discuss a new task order that needs to be funded. That goes back to that leadership I was talking about. There's no such thing as this is the client and the client is always right. Not a government contracting. Because when that money runs out, the money runs out. And then you're sitting there with work not done, looking as though you weren't capable of performing. Because people are looking at the original terms of the contract. And then when you say, but we were asked to do all this extra work, you still look like you weren't able to perform because you didn't manage scope creep. Understand your role. And I'm going to end it right there. We talk about scope creep and all of those good things at the Contractor Intensive in October. That's October 4th, 5th, and 6th in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's an event that I'm putting on. 3 days, industry experts. We're bringing experts with 20 plus years experience in the government contracting field to come in there and help our participants develop contracting plans so that they can become powerful government contractors, so that you can have that stable foundation. Because a lot of companies are not powerful in their contracting because they do not understand, as I like to call it, the rules of engagement. Now, if you're on any other platform other than Instagram, the link to the website is showing. It's eventcreate.com/e/contractor intensive. On Instagram, I'm going to try to pin a post somewhere, but it's on there. I've already announced 3 of my facilitators, well, 4 of you, including myself, and additional facilitators are being announced. This is a time where strategy is important. Even just as a business, strategy is important. Learning how to finance your contracts properly. We're discussing that. We're discussing the proper way of doing project management and revenue recognition. That is so important because people don't even know how to monitor revenue on their projects properly. The proper way to bill a government contract. I will never forget talking to a contracting officer, and he was frustrated by how he had to keep sending an invoice back to several of his small businesses. And while the government has this whole initiative around doing more business with small businesses, a lot of agencies do not like working with small businesses. So one, they don't take the time to learn how to do business with the government. And 2, billing errors. Now, the government has to pay small businesses within a certain period of time due to the Prompt Pay Act. But the government complains that small businesses don't invoice them correctly. So now they're stuck on their side trying to explain why they're not paying within the Prompt Pay Act. But the Prompt Pay Act also says the invoice has to be a payable invoice. And they're not, because the small businesses are not investing in themselves to learn how to do it properly. And you do not invoice the, let me just say this. You cannot go into the B2G world acting like it's the same as B2C and B2B. And that's part of the problem. We're going in there acting like this is the same industry. We're going to talk about that in the intensive as well. Even though a lot of people think, oh, I've won a government contract, I've got it made. That's only the beginning. That is only the beginning. Winning the contract, but you can lose the award. We're even going to talk about how you can win a contract and not actually gain any revenue under it. For all of you who are trying to figure that out, we're going to talk about that. So get in the room in Charlotte, North Carolina, October 4th, 5th, and 6th for the Contractor Intensive. Invest in it. There are plenty of networking events, that networking sessions included. Your next partner could be in that room. Your next business adventure, your next coach could be in that room. Because like I said in the beginning, you never want to do business alone. And with that, I'm going to wrap up because I need to prepare for the masterclass tonight. And I have an appointment in a couple of appointments before the masterclass. So for all of you that I will see later tonight, I'll see you in the hub or I'll see you on YouTube. And for the rest of you, have an amazing, amazing weekend. And now see you bright and early Monday morning at 7:30 a.m. for another installment of Contractors Chatter. I am Luciana Turner. I am your host. Have an amazing, amazing weekend.